Welcome to the Road to Retirement. I'm your co-host, Tony Shore, and I'm here with our host, the man with the plan, Zach Padden. Zach, I'm looking forward to the show today. Really, the show should be called The Road to Financial Freedom or something like that, because we don't just talk about retirement on the show. However, it is something that's important, and really that's why people invest, is for the future. And most people's future is going to be retirement, hopefully. So I guess it all adds up in the end, doesn't it?
It does, but you're right. Financial picture does sound better. Financial future.
Yeah.
I mean, all of our goal is to retire at some point, but not everybody gets there, and nobody knows when that perfect date is, and that's a scary thing for a lot of people. Will they have
Yeah.
enough money? Will they have a shortfall?
Right.
And if you don't work with a good advisor, you may not know where you're missing or where you can do better.
Yeah. Or how can I invest during my working years and make that grow? And I know you guys help with that too. So you really start with people in their working years, and you work with people in retirement, and you help them make that transition too. So I think that's great. I don't know why I jumped into that right away. It's just the name
Oh,
Road to I always think Road to Retirement. They do so much more. They do taxes.
yeah.
They do investments and, portfolio management, things like that. But Zach, what are we talking about on the show today, buddy?
So today, I really think we should talk about estate planning for the future. You got to be thinking about your future, and there's a lot of different things that includes. One of the things is whoever your beneficiaries are, we should be thinking about their financial picture as well.
Ah, okay.
So think about if you have a child who's a degenerate gambler or has a ton of debt, you may
Mhm.
not want to give them a lump sum all at once.
Right. Right.
And
Like something like Tony Marlette Jr.'s parents would want to, they wouldn't want to just leave everything, one big lump sum to a guy in his shape and condition.
yeah, exactly.
I'm
Shout out
kidding.
Tony. Shout out Tony over there doing some taxes right now.
I
But
bet he is. I bet he
uh,
is. And
you worry about that.
you are an estate planning attorney. Before we get too far into this, that's what you do, isn't it?
Yes, that is my main focus here. I am one of our estate planning attorneys. We help people with elder law, trusts, estate planning, probate, and our big goal is to avoid probate. But a lot of times people don't get the right tools or planning done, and their family is going to have to go through the costly and time-consuming process of probate.
Yeah, that's tough. And I'm glad we're going to talk about this today. But first, I took some notes here. I've got some attorney and lawyer jokes.
Uh oh.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But you did pass the bar. You are an attorney. I'm always impressed. And I know the hard work and intelligence it takes to get to where you're at. Guys like Chris Anselmo and yourself, we'll just call you Chris Jr. in the office there. But that's impressive. And this is something you do every day, help people with estate planning, things like that. So you you mentioned beneficiaries. You want to
Mhm.
make sure you want to look at their situation before you list them as a beneficiary, is
Yeah.
what you were saying, right?
Yeah, and even if they're in a bad situation, you can still leave them money. You just may want to go about it a different way. If somebody's having financial struggles or you're afraid what they're going to do when they get this windfall of money, with trust planning, we can set it up so that they don't get all their money at once. So you may want to have them get a monthly stipend to kind of help their lifestyle,
Hmm.
but not a lump sum where they say, I'm retiring at 40 years old, and then they're going to run out of money like all these professional athletes do when the money dries up. You could also think about something of just giving them the lump sum, and it's their life, their problem. But there are times when that's going to cause them more harm than good in their lifestyle.
Sure, and you're right, and you got to watch out, because also harm the lifestyle, but cause costly and expensive mistakes can be made, right?
Yeah, imagine if you would have got a lump sum of money at 18 or 19 years old. What would have happened to that money?
I
Gone. New
Yeah,
cars, trips.
yeah. I always say, if my parent, anytime in my 20s, really,
Mhm.
before until I reached probably 25, if I had gotten a lump sum of money myself. I mean, keep in mind, it was the 80s. I was a DJ right out of high school, full-time radio guy, radio jockey. And if somebody had given me $1 million, not only would that money have been gone quickly, but I'd probably be dead in a ditch somewhere, right? I mean, come on. You can't give a 20-year-old hundreds of thousands of dollars and expect it to work out well. And maybe some people, my daughter who's 21, she's probably the most sensible, smart money manager I know. So I would trust her. Every case is different, but most 20-year-olds, myself included, I look back there and I go, I wish I had the sensibilities and knowledge about finances that I do now back then. But
Yeah, and honestly, we're not teaching kids financial literacy either. I know that's off topic, but
no personal finance class. They should start at sixth or seventh grade, and it should be required. Like it should be as important as math and reading, and English and history. It should be taught every year, starting in at least seventh grade.
life
Personal
skills
finance.
101, it should just be the basic things you need to do so that when life hits you, when you turn 18 years old and you're a quote unquote adult, you have the life skills to file a tax return. You know how to fill out a credit card application. You know how to balance a checkbook.
To put enough into it. You start a 401k, and when you get your first job, and make sure you're maxing that out. And
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't even do anything with the match. If your
right.
company's matching 3 or 4% and you're not doing that, you're throwing money out the window.
Yeah, I mean, some companies have maybe a 6% match, and you're putting in either the minimum. Your company automatically takes some out, maybe, hopefully, or when I was young, they didn't do that. You either didn't sign up. I just didn't sign up for the 401k, didn't contribute.
Yeah,
I'm
and
like, I want the biggest check possible each week. When I was in my 20s, I'm like, why would I want to leave more somewhere else?
and that's where a lot of people just don't start early enough. And
Yeah,
it's never too late. If you haven't done anything, get
right.
started. But the earlier you can start, the better, because when that money compounds, it's just going to continue to grow and you're going to have a way bigger retirement account than you ever thought was imaginable.
Right. It's the old saying, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so
It's
yeah,
true.
yeah,
And that's one of the big things that scare people is they just don't know how to start or they don't know what tools they can use.
right.
And that's where meeting with an estate planning attorney or a financial advisor puts you in a position where you're going to get the right information to understand how to move forward.
Yeah. Okay, so what are some other reasons why this is so important, and what do our listeners need to know about estate planning?
One of the big things that everybody talks about, but they don't really understand, is nursing homes. Everybody thinks that the nursing home is going to take your house. That's the biggest thing that people come in. I don't want them to take my house. And it's not really true, but it's not false either.
Right.
Really, what happens here is if you own a home and you go to a nursing home, you're going to self pay for a while. Medicaid has requirements for them to be able to cover your nursing home stay, which that's what everybody wants to have happen. In the end, you're going to spend down all your assets and then you're going to have like left your house, usually a car and a little bit of money. Medicaid then builds up a bill, and every month they cover your expenses. It racks up this final total, and they put a lien against your house at the end, kind of like a mortgage that's required to get paid. So that's how they take your house, but really, you're just racking up a bill that your family may not be able to afford on the back end. They won't come after them personally, but you're just losing their inheritance with not
Right.
doing any Medicaid planning.
Right. And I want to point out and ask you, Zach, Medicaid. So our
Yes.
listeners should not be confused. Medicare does not cover long-term care or nursing home stays.
Yeah,
They might
you
cover rehabilitative care in a home, or a transitional care, and that's only under certain circumstances if you come right from the hospital and need to go into it, and that's only for 90 days or until you improve, and then no more.
Yeah, the one big thing people think is, "Oh, I have 100 days." It's like, you really don't. If you
You
have
don't.
a
You
disease
don't.
that you're not gonna get better,
Like
th
Parkinson's, my
they
mom.
s they stop covering. They
Yeah.
say, "Hey, you're not gonna get better." Now, if I fall and break my hip and have to go to a nursing home for a while, they'll cover that transitional stay. because they see the light at the end of the tunnel. I
Or
am
after
going to get
knee
better.
surgery, you might have to have some transitional care. They cover that up to 90 days. Or when if you start to improve, and if the second you aren't improving, then they stop covering.
They
Yeah.
throw you out the door.
Yeah, so they really don't cover long-term care. I mean,
No.
that's a misconception, and they don't necessarily cover 90 or 100 days of long-term care. You have to meet certain circumstances. Medicaid covers long-term care,
Yes.
but covers my mother has been in long-term care because of late-stage Parkinson's for 2 years. It's $11,000 a month.
Mhm.
Her and my dad didn't have that money.
No.
So Medicaid's been covering it, right?
Yeah.
And
And
they've been covering all but $2,000 a month, and 1,000 of that is from an insurance policy, and then my dad has to write a check for $1,000 each month, so to help cover that, and that's just based on assets that they have. So, but since he still owns the farm and there's a residence there, they can't touch the farm, and they still have to cover her. But the second she passes and he passes,
they're
the
going to
se
collect.
the second my dad passes and no longer has a residence on that farm, they're going to put a lien against it, and that farm has been in our family since it was homesteaded in 1855. My grandfather was raised there, my dad was raised on that farm, and I was raised on that farm. There's 2 houses, my grandparents'
Yeah.
house and my dad's house, and on the same farm, and so now, because of long-term care, is out of control, probably gonna lose the family farm, and they didn't set it up where it was in a trust in 5 years. They didn't have Zach Padden working with them. If my grandfather had done it correctly, this could have actually been avoided,
Yeah. And
right?
that's where a lot of people don't realize there's something called an irrevocable trust, which scares people because they hear that term irrevocable.
You're right.
But when you use these tools,
Mhm.
these assets, I say it built a force field around it, which just allows it to be protected after a 5-year window, which is
Yep.
that Medicaid look back.
Yep.
You always hear people say you got to do it 5 years early. And that's because the Medicaid look back for any gifts or transfers is 5 years. So if we're outside that window, that property gets protected. Now, the
Yeah.
laws may change over the years. It may become higher, it may become lower, but right now the law is for 5 years for the look back.
Yeah, and I wasn't fully aware of how it worked, and my grandfather would not discuss finances or any of this openly. I, as a grandson, I couldn't go to him and say, "Grandpa, you need to do this." And based on what my mom or to my dad and grandfather, they're 100% English. They don't share personal finances with outsiders, and so it was hard for me. It's hard in my position. Um, and I kind of knew this, but when my mom went in 2 years ago, it would have had to happen 5 years before that happened.
Yeah.
And to get them to do that 5 years before that happened, and then of course my grandfather passed away, my dad inherited it. Well, right after my mom went in there, so it's like, what do you do at that point?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah, and the best thing is your mom is getting the care she needs, and,
Yes,
if you don't do
exactly.
anything, care will be provided, but if you wanna leave these assets to your family, you gotta do some of this pre-planning so that you're giving them the benefits and you're making sure this family property or your home is protected for them.
Yeah, our listeners out there, they need to pick up the phone and give Zach Padden a call, right?
Yeah, and
At
even
Brookside.
if you have family members who are close and you don't think they have 5 years, still give us a call. There are
Oh, for
different
sure.
tools that we can use to protect a lot of these assets
Yep.
that we're not gonna be able to get into on a 20, 30-minute podcast, but we'd be able to sit down with you and be able to say, "Okay, here's how we can protect this money. We don't want any of that money to go towards care, or at least as little as possible."
Right. And so you want them to have good care, which they're getting. And now, um, I didn't mean to hijack the conversation,
No,
Zach,
you're
but
good.
I thought that was a good example of a
No.
situation that people need to be aware of that can happen. I don't think people realize what can happen.
Yeah, and if nursing homes cost $2,000 a month, we wouldn't be having this worry.
No, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
No, a
But
lot of
if
people, Social Security would cover it, and
yeah.
that would be great, but we're not when it's $11,000 a month.
Yeah, my mom's bill is 11,000 a month. I know that there's a memory care facility near where I live that my son actually worked for, and if you once they hit memory care where they need full-time everything care, everything done for them, it was, and this is about 5 years ago, it was $12,000 a month. So,
That's
I mean, nice facility,
yeah,
but
and
yeah.
more people are living longer, and we're needing more and more care. It's
Yeah.
not just
It's like 73% of Americans will or are what is it? I forget. Once you hit 65, like 70 some percent of people will need long-term care.
yeah. It's the amount of stats that you see that more and more people are using nursing homes.
Yeah.
Their families can't take care of them at home anymore. It used to just be mom or dad would move into your house
Right.
and you guys would suck it up. But with Alzheimer's and dementia, the wandering, a lot of people aren't set up to do this.
Yeah, I mean, my mom, we couldn't. She can't do really anything on her own because of the muscle control, and her mind is still pretty sharp, but she has a hard time communicating sometimes. It's hard for her to get sentences out, but when she does, it's you can tell she's sharp, still has some memory, but she can't. She has trouble. It's hard for her to feed herself. She still does, but they help her, and we would have to have somebody at home with her full time. And you can hire a nurse, but you can't be there all the time. And we don't have the facilities for a live-in nurse.
Mhm.
And that costs a lot of money, so it's tough.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who don't need full nursing home care yet, but they do need help. And
Yes,
having somebody come in a couple hours a day or a couple hours a week
sure.
is a way better alternative.
Yeah, we did that for a while with my mom and dad at home, but now they're both, my dad's in assisted living and mom's in full-time care, but yeah.
Which, from what you said, is the best place for them at this point.
Yeah,
It's
it's a great they're in a really good place that takes Medicaid. And like the fancy place that's 12,000 a month, they don't even take Medicaid.
yeah,
So I don't know how people pay for it there, but you have to be very, very wealthy, I guess.
they liquidate as much as they can and hope they can stay there as long as they can.
Yes, exactly.
That's
And then
it's
they have
sad.
to
That's the
move,
truth.
and then the family will eventually have to move them into a facility that's probably not as nice that does take Medicaid. So you want to plan, you don't want to leave your family in a bad situation. You don't want to be in that situation. Plan ahead. So nursing homes is a big thing to plan for, and that's a big part of estate planning, and people don't
Yeah,
maybe realize that.
yeah. If you come in when you're 20 or 30, we're not worried about nursing homes yet. But this
No.
is where we talk about your estate plan grows with you over time.
Yeah.
When your kids are young, you're worried about that guardian for them.
Yep.
When your kids are in their 30s or 40s and you're retiring, you're saying, okay, now I got to worry about nursing homes, maybe, or do I want to worry about leaving them a lump sum of money all at once?
Right.
So over time, you should be reviewing your estate plan with an attorney and making sure that it's still accomplishing the goals and wishes of your family because those goals and wishes are going to change. If they don't, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, you got to review it regularly. And I know you guys, that's what you do for your clients. You help them out with this. And a big part of it that we haven't really touched on are powers of attorney. You want to make sure those are set up early on, right?
Yeah, and that's I think it was that last week we had a full episode about the
Yeah.
importance of power of
I just
attorneys,
thought
but
we'd mention it again since we're
no,
talking about
it's
it.
huge. I mean, the big thing is putting the right people in the right places. If
Yeah.
you don't have the right person as your power of attorney, you're not getting the decisions that you want made.
Yeah.
So putting the right healthcare individuals in there and putting the right people in for financial decisions is key because at some point you might not be able to do this for yourself and you want to make sure it's still the right person.
So that ties into the nursing home or health long-term care aspect of estate planning. Those health decisions, health directives, medical power of attorney. I'm so glad I got that all straightened out with my parents before they started really deteriorate, going downhill. So That's really important. And, I don't want to leave my kids in a bad situation. I've learned from my grandfather's situation after he passed, and now I've learned from helping my parents. So I want to make sure these things are taken care of.
Yeah.
So my kids don't have to go through what I'm going through and my parents are going through, right?
Yeah, and that's one of, I think, the big things we see is once somebody goes through a nursing home stay for their parents or a big medical issue for somebody they know, they come in and they realize they need to do this.
Yeah.
As much as we can send marketing or advertising to people, they got to have some kind of life event usually that spurs them to come in.
To kick them in the bottom because this is just something that people put off. People don't like to think about these things. They don't like to talk about them. But
Yeah, and
again, yeah.
what's scary is you look in the obituaries, it's not just one age group anymore. There's people every age passing away or somebody's sick you see. You it's it's not just for the elderly anymore. I mean, you need
No.
to make sure you're doing this at all ages
Yeah.
because you don't know what tomorrow brings.
Yeah. Nobody knows what tomorrow brings. And yet you can't let it debilitate you, but you can plan, right? Uh, you know,
Yeah, I have my estate plan right here in my bottom desk drawer. It's here for safekeeping in case something happens. My wife and I have power of attorney set up. We have transfer on deaths on all of our accounts. We
yep.
have everything set up so our family will avoid probate.
Yeah, and I gave you the exact spelling of my full legal name for that,
Yeah,
right? You
everything's
got
left
it,
to
Anthony.
Anthony Shore. Yeah,
Yeah,
don't
there you go.
worry.
Okay, okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, when that hitman hits me next week,
Yeah.
I know it was you sent who sent it.
Yeah, any couple without children or extended family like yourselves, I like to just offer up my name for those
That's really nice of you to do that person for
beneficiary
us.
designations that transfer on death line to Anthony Shore. All right. Well, seriously though, Zach, it's a serious topic, but and it is so important. I
Yeah.
don't want to make light of that because it is really important. I'm glad you're talking about it. I'm glad you're there. And I know you offer a no charge consultation to get people's finances in order and come in and then see what they need. And then you can let them know how you can help them. If our listeners have questions and want to set up that consultation, how can they do that?
So the easiest way to set up a consultation is say, "Hey, I was listening to the podcast. I want to come in and talk to Zach or Tony or Chris." And you give us a call at 216-485-1040. Or you can go on our website at www.anselmolaw.com. And you'll see then our team. You can set up Calendly appointments with us. So that way you can make it into our office or we could do a Zoom and we'd be able to discuss what's the best route for you and your family.
Excellent. And that's anselmolaw.com. Zach, always great to talk to you. Some great information today. Appreciate that. And listeners out there, viewers, that does it for today's episode of The Road to Retirement with our host, Zach Patton.
Thank you, Tony.